Hi, I'm Jamie Gaskins. I'm going to be talking to you about Perpetuity, a Ruby data mapper implementation to persist your plain Ruby objects to a database. We're going to be using the Virtus library for our objects because it makes Ruby objects very easy to work with. So there's nothing about Perpetuity that depends on Virtus. It's just going to help us create objects a lot more easily and work with them a lot more easily. So to get started, all we really need to do is we need to require the Perpetuity gem, define our classes here. For example, this would be something that would be in an application that allows users to message each other. So each person has a mailbox that holds all their messages, and then the mailbox gets populated with message objects. On top of that, we need to configure Perpetuity. This can come before or after, it really doesn't matter. So we tell it that we just want to use as our data source. Our data source is going to be a MongoDB, and it's going to be the testing database. Just pick a name for your database in there. It defaults to localhost default MongoDB port, and no authentication. So you could use that in development or test environments, but for production, you'll definitely want to specify something with at least some authentication. After that, we define our mappers, which basically just tell Perpetuity what attributes we want to persist with these particular objects. So we say Perpetuity generate mapper for, and it's gonna create a mapper for the person class, and it's gonna persist these two objects. Now these objects, there's no restriction on what they can be. They can be like this mailbox can be an array, or it could be something else. It could be like an actual mailbox class object. Now you see here, the embedded true option means that it's going to denormalize those objects, and it's going to store them, it's going to serialize them and store them as part of the object inside the database, as part of that record. Or since we're using MongoDB, it's going to be a part of that JSON document, BSON document. And with this in place, let's go ahead and see how it works. So let's go ahead and create some objects here. So we have person, mailbox, and message. So let's go ahead and create a person object, and this is going to be Alice. Okay, and see, Alice already has a mailbox here. It's part of the way we set it up in Virtus. We told it that the default attribute for the mailbox for our person class was going to be an empty mailbox. So then we're going to go ahead and we're going to say person mapper. We're going to get a reference to a new person mapper object. So the way we do that in Perpetuity is we say Perpetuity with the subscript operator and use the class inside the brackets. So then what we can do after that is we can say person mapper.count. There are no objects in there. So let's go ahead and save Alice. Insert Alice into the database. And so Alice is now in the database, and our person mapper count is up to 1. Now the way we get things back out of the database is we say person mapper all.toA, and that'll give us all of the objects in the database. Right now we only have Alice. So let's go ahead and put Bob in there as well. Say Bob equals person.new name Bob. Well, Alice is lowercase, so we'll make Bob lowercase too. Okay, and then we're going to say person mapper insert Bob. So now when we get all of our person objects back out, we have Alice here and we have Bob here. Now you notice our mailbox attributes are references instead of mailboxes. This is because we need to limit how much we pull out of the database so that we're not dragging the entire object graph out when all we need is just one thing. Like, for example, if our users had authentication information such as email and password, and we're going in there and grabbing, just trying to authenticate them with into our app, we're not grabbing out all of their messages at the same time. So in order to get the actual mailbox objects there, we can save this array, and then we say person mapper dot load association people. We're going to load the people, and we want their mailbox attributes. The mailbox is just a symbol representing the attribute that we want loaded. So that gives us actual mailbox objects in our mailbox attributes. Now inside our app, we had our messages were embedded. So when we save messages here, we'll say alice.message .mailbox, and we're going to give her a new message. Author is going to be Bob, and the body is just going to be, "Hi Alice, how you doing? How are the kids?" So this gives Alice this message object, and we can go ahead and we can go ahead and see that in here. It's been put inside there. That's just plain old Ruby stuff. That's not even Perpetuity has nothing to do with that. So let's go ahead and save this though. So how do we save this mailbox? Well, we need to make sure that it's the mailbox object that we're saving, not Alice. If we save Alice and the mailbox is already persisted, it's not going to save the mailbox. So we need to say perpetuity, because this time we need the mailbox mapper. So perpetuity mailbox dot save alice dot mailbox, and that makes sure that we say perpetuity mailbox dot all to a. And here's Bob's mailbox. His mailbox is still empty because nobody likes him apparently. And Alice's mailbox has her message in it from Bob. Now you can see here that this is a reference to Bob, which means that is something that we will have to dereference again. But it works. Also, the nice thing about the mappers is that they have an identity map. So if we were to retrieve an object by ID, so we'll say person mapper dot find, and we'll get Bob's ID here. Why didn't that work? Oh, because we're getting... It's the wrong one. So we'll try this again. Person mapper find, and then that's Bob's ID there. That gives us Bob. Okay, so if we load up the person, or show the person mapper again, our identity map has a person in it with Bob's ID. So if we do run this again, this isn't even touching the database. We could do this all day. It's giving us the exact same person object back with the same object ID. So even if you have to go several layers deep and pick up references, sometimes that identity map will help save you on some performance. But we don't always want to get all of the objects out or find by a specific ID. Sometimes you need to get objects by another ID, like let's say we need to find somebody with a specific name. One way we do this with an array, if we have our people objects in here, if we say people dot find person, where the person dot name equals Alice, that gives us Alice back. We can do the same thing with our person mapper. You can see what happens if we use the select method instead. Here's our perpetuity retrieval object that we get from setting up a database query. See, our criteria is Alice here. It's the exact same thing it does when we run find, except it calls first on it. So that's how that works. There are a lot of other things that you can do with a query API. For example, if you want to select based on a regex, we support that as well. And you can see right here, we just passed the regex along to it. So let's take this back to find. Okay, so we have Alice. All right, and so if we pass along, this is a case-sensitive regex. With the wrong case, we return nothing. But we can make it case-insensitive, just like a normal Ruby regex, and we get back Alice. Now we can go back to our application here. In addition to querying based on equality and regex, we can also query based on inequality. So if we say attribute registered at, this is going to be a time, default is going to be time.now. So let's go back into our app. Let's get us a new person mapper. Person. So person mapper, we'll delete our old stuff here. So let's create us a new person. Alice is person.new with the name of Alice. We'll give her a capital letter this time. Okay, and see here we've got registered at. So when we save her, person mapper dot say insert Alice, then we can say let's also go ahead and get ourselves a new Bob here. New name is Bob, but we'll say he registered an hour ago. Okay, so about an hour difference between the two. And person mapper insert Bob. So we can see that I forgot to add the registered at attribute. Let's try this again. All right, so Alice equals person mapper first. Okay, so Alice dot registered at is going to be time.now, and then Bob is person mapper dot find person with the person.name equals Bob. Okay, and so Bob's registered at is going to equal time.now minus 3600. So then we can go ahead and person mapper.save Alice and .save Bob. So this time we can go ahead and we can query based on that select person, where person.registered at is greater than, we'll say time.now minus 30 minutes ago, so that's 1800 seconds. Of course, need to convert that to an array. And see, Alice is the only one we get back because she's the only one that registered in the last 30 minutes. You can see that here, criteria registered at is greater than this time. There's also other abilities to query based on your normal query stuff like sorting, limiting, offsets, things like that. So we'll say person mapper.all.limit1.2a. Okay, and see that only gives us one back. We can also get page1.per_page2. Okay, or .per_page1. You know, Kaminari, eat your heart out. And additionally, we've also got drop1.take1. And that works exactly the same as the array methods. So if we go back to that, we'll say .sort. We're going to sort based on timestamp. Okay, we want. And you see that gave us Bob because we're getting page 2, so we're getting the second of 2. And if we reverse that, seriously, of course, sorting by registered at. Okay, so Bob came back there, and if we get rid of the reverse, then we get Alice. That was confusing. Make sure you're sorting by the right attributes there. And that's basically Perpetuity in a nutshell. There are other features such as indexing, including unique indexes, so that you don't need to validate uniqueness of. There's also customizing the ID attribute so that you can get better slugs for your SEO. And all that stuff can be found at on the Perpetuity project page. So come over here, it shows you the configuration, how to set up your mappers, load your objects. Customizing persistence here shows you how to set up your mapper to customize the ID attribute. These are your indexing methods. So you say index and then the attribute you want to index. You add unique true on the end for unique indexes. You can specify the order of the index. Now it doesn't create the index on the database immediately because that could introduce downtime. So what you'll need to do is to call reindex bang on that particular mapper in order to actually push the indexes to the database. If you have any other questions on that, I'm Jay Gaskins on GitHub. My email address is there. Additionally, you can also tweet at me as Jamie_Gaskins on Twitter. Thanks for watching.